Othering Podcast explores the world of marginalized communities with a focus on the disabled and LGBTQ+. In our discussions, we will provide a platform for our guests to advocate and share their stories. By delving deep into their difficulties and successes, we will explore the changes necessary to improve lives everywhere. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Othering Podcast with Mike and Dory.
PEP Radio, part of the Pennsylvania Equality Project, advocates for the rights of LGBTQ+ people, the disabled, and marginalized communities. We play music from all 7 continents from 1928 through 2025. We also offer news, history lessons, and are proud to include the Othering Podcast in our programming lineup. Tune in on the Live 365 app, Roku, and Alexa every Saturday and Sunday at 4 p.m.
First impressions can take as little as 6 seconds to make. But in these fleeting moments, whose amazing stories don't we get to hear? That's where Beyond 6 Seconds comes in. Join me, Carolyn Keel, as I uncover stories of life and creativity, triumph and struggle, with a focus on neurodiversity. I'm featuring neurodivergent people whose stories shatter misconceptions, break stigma, and showcase vibrance and diversity. To listen, go to beyond6seconds.net or follow the show in your favorite podcast player.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
All right, today we are talking to Joseph Kibler. Joseph was born HIV positive and is a disabled actor, writer, director, and content creator from New York. Joseph lives with cerebral palsy, and through his content, he advocates for equal and fair treatment. Joseph has been seen on CSI Cyber, Chicago Med, Criminal Minds, and a short film called Adoptive, and his new social media series is titled Crypt Tips, which is very fun.
Yes.
Welcome, Joseph. It's great to have you.
Yes, thank you
Hi,
so much.
thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. It is thoroughly our pleasure to talk with you. I wanted to kind of jump right in on, like, how was it when getting into the acting world as a disabled performer? Sometimes it's a little harder when, expectations are of this tall, strapping person, and they get, me, a short type of not strapping kind of thing. So how was that navigating for you?
Well, so I had got into acting when I was 17, 18, and I moved out to LA from Florida at the time. And so for me, it was always the question of like, is there not many disabled actors out there because they don't want to do it or because they're not getting the opportunities? And so when I moved, I was really trying to navigate it from a completely unknown situation. I had no idea what I was getting into. And eventually I realized I needed to learn about it from the other side. And so I went to film school and I ended up really getting into casting. And so for my first few years in LA, I was a casting director.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how I built up a lot of what my network became and why it really gave me the understanding and the education of what it means to be an actor and what is the barriers that disabled actors are facing. And it's been fascinating to watch the evolution now over the last, say that was 2008. So quite a bit of time now.
Mm-hmm.
It's such an interesting thing because you feel like you're kind of taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back through auditions, through getting into the door. It used to be just getting the audition in general was, and then you'd be in there with able-bodied actors playing disabled roles. You'd see a lot of language, and you still see it today often, where it'll say things like, actors in wheelchairs encouraged to submit. Very carefully worded use of phrasing to be like, you sure can submit. We're not only seeing disabled actors for this disabled part, but we will see you as well, which feels, again, not always the most encouraging or not always the most positive and reaffirming.
Yes.
And so, for a long time, you kind of changed what your measurement of what you expect in the industry. I think for me, when I first started, it was like just getting any roles. Anyone getting any roles was a big thing. And then suddenly, like, I found that I was going up for a lot of the same things over and over. And now for about the last 14 years, the amount of war vets that I've auditioned for is in the hundreds of hundreds, to the point where you could take all those audition sides, just string them together, and probably make its own movie, and it would be coherent because the character description is always the same. It's war vet with a heart of gold who's sarcastic, and he's always talking about how he can't have sex anymore. And it's just like, that's like what it's like, always just over and over again, the same thing. And it's crazy how often people have this one idea of what being disabled can be. And so that's a barrier in itself, is like when you start feeling defeated by the types of auditions you go out for. And then whether you want to be seen, and you get into the minutia of it, because then you start being like, well, I'm getting in for roles that are paraplegic, but I have cerebral palsy. And so it's defining lines of like, well, is this okay? When is it not authentic anymore? And so it's a ever evolving conversation. And it's been kind of one of those things that, like, between me and my wife, my wife is also a disabled actor, we're always trying to decide, like, what is the main goal right now? What are we trying to achieve in this moment? And if we can make these little achievable steps, we feel like we're doing something. So I know that was a bit roundabout.
Oh, no,
but
no. It was perfect.
So you clearly got a lot of ableism trying to get the roles. Once you were in the roles you did you see a lot of ableism and problems with fellow actors, or were they very accommodating and good?
I've been very lucky. The productions that I've been on have been extremely accommodating. And it's very interesting because I would say it's almost been a bit of the opposite for me, which is also still a form of ableism, which I don't think is talked about enough, which is too much caretaking.
Wow.
Like overwhelming, to the point where it's been very sweet, but as actors, some of the best networking we get is when we're on set and when we get to be with other actors. And a great example of that is like when you cut for like part of your day and you're heading to lunch. Right. A lot of the sets that I've been on, they want to accommodate and they want to be respectful, which is sweet. So they'll be like, okay, you stay in your trailer. We'll bring you everything. And you're going to set you up really nice in your own spot by yourself. And it's like, that's a sweet thought to be like, we want to keep you from having to do the work of coming to the lunch area, but you're removing someone from a chance to socialize and a chance to network and potentially vie in for another job. This is a chance to mingle with the producers, to talk to the writers, to have, a chance to be seen beyond just the performance time that you have. And so they don't even realize it, but that's kind of taking you away, and it's isolating. It reminds me of like when I grew up, when my cousins would all go out to play and I'd be inside. Yeah. And so there'd be a designated cousin that would stay in with me. And like, who's going to be the designated cousin to stay inside and hang out with?
As if you're
Joseph.
Drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. And I can imagine that it kind of also feels infantilizing, having people sit there and say, oh, we'll get it for you. Oh, we'll get it for you. And which is another thing that in the disabled community is like a real big problem, is you don't want to be treated like a child, a toddler, because, at some point we do grow up. And as much as it would be nice to not have to deal with adulting sometimes, we still kind of get to those adult ages. And it would be nice if they didn't look down at us as a bunch of like children with adult bodies.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, and in the industry, they're very used to coddling actors or co-stars or stars for the day. So it's like a double intensity because it's like they're doing the actor part of the caretaking for the actor, make sure that they're all happy. But then it's like, here's a disabled person. And then there'll be times when it feels like you can see it behind their eyes of like, okay, don't get a lawsuit, don't get a lawsuit, don't get a lawsuit, don't let them trip, don't let them trip, don't let them trip, don't let them, and that shouldn't have to be, there shouldn't have to be this fear of having us on set, the worry of like, what's going to go wrong? Is something going to go wrong? And I think that keeps them sometimes at a distance, and it keeps them from hiring us because they're worried about all the things they could do wrong.
But that's kind of like an able-bodied person, things can go wrong. I mean, there have been hundreds of movies where, able-bodied actors have ended up with like horrific and catastrophic injuries.
Yeah, or death. I mean, Rust. The Crow.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it was Enter the Dragon for Bruce Lee, and or it was one of those that he was doing where he ended up shot and
right.
unfortunately passed. So you can try and prepare as much as you can. Of course, you don't want this to happen, and I get that, but sometimes shit happens,
Right.
and to over coddle us, I would think could also cause shit to happen, because you can't, say what you need, or even, sometimes you have to stand, or sometimes you have to sit down, and all of that kind of plays into our abilities, and we know those really well,
Yeah,
or at least
absolutely.
we should. Sometimes I don't, but
Sometimes we know deep, deep, deep,
yeah,
deep in the
it's so
back of our
deep.
head.
Sometimes you got to go fishing.
Yeah.
I I have a question. It's something I hear a lot on other podcasts I listen to that talk to actors. But as you were growing up, at what point did you kind of realize you wanted to do acting? This is the direction you wanted to take.
Well, I had always been a latchkey kid. I had always grew up on TV and movies and
Okay.
everything. But when I was in high school, fun enough, I was just telling this story. I was on set the other day, and I I had wanted to get into automotive. I wanted to get into mechanics, and I was like, I wanted to figure out cars. And my guidance counselor or whatever who I was working out the schedule with was just like, and this was in Florida, like, ooh, disabled kid, heavy machinery, not a good idea. Let's just stick you in theater. And I was like, okay, I guess so. And it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, which was, it's very funny. It's like I did not think about it at all. And I was 15 at the time. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot, and auditioned for my first play, which was The Crucible, and got Judge Hathorne.
Oh wow.
And I started doing summer camp. And what had happened was, because I had been born HIV positive as well, I hadn't been out about that. And during a theater camp exercise, which was just like this, which if you've ever done theater camp or anything like it could be like therapy. One of the exercises the director wanted us to do was go on stage and talk to the audience and tell our peers something we've never told anyone. And so I took that opportunity and said, I'm Joseph Kibler and I'm HIV positive. And it completely just freed everything. I didn't even realize what kind of place I was in my life mentally. And it gave me such relief and it gave me such freedom and changed everything. I mean, it saved my life. And so from that day on, I was like, I'm going to give my life to theater. And those directing mentors of mine give me and two of my friends a place to live in California. Is that if we're really serious about being actors when we graduate, just come on out. So we drove to 2,600 miles. We had no jobs. We had nowhere really to live. And they gave us a couch to sleep on and to figure it out. And so I owe them everything. But from there, I just kind of became an actor and decided that's what I was going to do and never looked back.
So, what was your peers' reaction when you said you're HIV positive?
Very supportive,
Good,
which was
good.
wonderful. Very, very supportive. And then I had mixed like situations in high school, but it was at least that group was very, very supportive.
Good.
And then I'd slowly start telling people, and I'd find situations where I'd be like, okay, this is something I'm gonna have to do, and realized it was kind of, and that's what happens when you have a disability or a chronic illness. They say like, is everyone with a chronic illness or disability an advocate, and does everyone do activism? And it's kind of the chicken or the egg because
Yep.
you kind of have to,
Yeah.
even if you don't want to.
Yes.
Right.
You have to because it's something you're dealing with, and in educating people because you just want to be accommodated appropriately or you just want to be seen normally, you're advocating and you're educating, and that's just innately something you're doing. So I'd have situations where friends would be like, oh, don't touch that gum, you're going to get AIDS. And I'd be like, okay, now I'm going to have to tell you. And I, and I have to come out to them and be like, and this would be awkward for them. And then they'd be like, I'm sorry, but now we're learning. And like,
Yes.
Right.
you know,
And
so
in the 80s, I get it because like we didn't know much about it, but by the 90s, the fact that in today,
yeah,
on your social media, the way that you are so patient and just so sweet to these people that I would love to find and just, smack the shit out of them because it's ridiculous. You can't get HIV by looking at somebody. You can't get it because they talk to you. You can't get it if you give them a hug.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that just refuse to learn that and understand that is mind-boggling to me. And like it helped kind of like I've said this before, but I'm going to tell you this too. All of you have saved me. And I was in a horribly dark place. Just my depression, my anxiety was just through the roof, everything. And finding you all saved me. So it lit in me that I had to help and kind of like save you back and give you a platform to talk. But just watching it, how patient you are. You are such an awesome teacher because that takes so much courage and thought and just understanding to be able to take somebody's ignorance and turn it into a beautiful video.
Thank you. Well, and that was a learning thing for me. And like, I've always felt a little bit like following hate or anger or like snippiness with something so ignorant. It doesn't, there's no good road that falls under. You don't end up anywhere with that. You just end up circling.
Yep.
And people shut down and then you lose and I found this would happen to me when I was, like even in the start of COVID, when I get really angry at people who didn't take it seriously. I get really heated, even with family members. And they would use that anger and that heat against me because they'd be like, we're just saying we don't know where it's coming from. We're just saying, we're just trying to have a rational conversation and you're getting all heated. It's like, I'm getting heated because this matters and because it's people's lives and because this is generally affecting people. And if you're not getting heated, then there's something wrong with that. But I realized through all that, you don't get anywhere when you start doing that because people will either shut down or they will think you don't have a stance or you don't have the education or you don't have the mindset to teach anyone anything and therefore they don't need to listen to you and it just no one goes anywhere. And so I had to really be mindful of like, okay, and whenever it's so funny because there'll be people who'll be like, oh, I wish you would have just gone after them. I wish you would have dug at them. And like, if I ever do that, or when I would find a weak moment and I would do that, the only thing I'd ever get from those posts were, wow, that's kind of beneath you, or wow, I can't believe you like didn't block out their username when you posted that. Like, you're really like, that's really mean of you. And it's so funny that the point then gets lost there too. So again, no one's winning. So what are we doing? And it felt like my mental health wasn't getting any better by doing that. So the best thing I could do is take ignorant moments and be like, okay, let's just further educate. And knowing the algorithm and knowing the clickbaitiness of it, I can at least take the ignorant moment, which is going to get people to watch the thing, to then educate on top of it. And then that will at least get further, and at least we can get some engagement that way.
And I commend you for that.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I would love to just like reach through and slap people because it would just watching it, how patient you are with that. And the fact that you have to do it over and over and over and over again is what really kind of upsets me because it just seems like how many times have we been told, about all of these more prevalent of diseases and disorders, illnesses, and yet people are just like completely dumbfounded constantly.
Well, and that's also the thing about having a platform is that you have new people coming to you every day that don't know everything else. They don't know the story. I'm in season 36 of my life, but there's a new follower tuning in and they're like, well, I don't know what the other 35 seasons were like, so can you catch me up? And so it's like, you can't, it's almost, you just have to be willing to give up the idea that like this is the goal. This just answering questions is the goal.
Right.
Doing it repetition is the goal. It's like teaching, but I think about that with teachers. It's the same thing. You teach fifth grade or you teach whatever. You're just getting the new class. You're not watching the class that you educated move on, and then you're educating them for seventh and eighth and ninth. You're now getting in the new crop of fifth graders who don't know anything from the beginning, and you're doing it again. You know, that's the deal, and you're trying to do that and raise awareness. And there's always going to be people who don't know out there, and you just hope that if you're getting to some people, that's all you can ask for.
So in this process, have you learned how to just kind of push aside the nasty comments, the bad comments, and just let it go?
I've gotten much better at it. At the beginning,
That's
it
good.
was, well, it wasn't, you know, I had done a documentary before I started doing social media. And through that documentary process, which was called Walk On, which was about me being HIV positive and doing the AIDS walk, through that process, doing festivals, not as much as the festivals, I didn't get as many nasty comments, but doing the AIDS walk, you know, every year if you do the AIDS walk, there's always a group of people who are protesting the AIDS walk,
Yep.
and they always say very bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not new to that. But doing it on this scale and seeing people come in, and they get real graphic and real nasty, and you get all these eugenic stuff. It takes a toll on you in the beginning. You feel very sensitive to it. And now I've gotten to a place where, like, if I do give it the time of day, it's again to reframe, to educate, to
Mm-hmm.
show that it exists.
Right.
And that's been fascinating because it's also like I'm dealing with other people's other mental health stuff on Instagram, where it's like I'm sharing this thing that happened to me, and it was a really like nasty comment, but then other people are coming in and saying, I wish you would have warned me about that nasty comment, because that's now triggering my feelings about this situation. And it's like this interesting world we found ourselves in on the online, where you're trying to navigate landmines constantly, and
Mm-hmm.
like trying to be better and trying to fix and trying to like move around it.
Yeah.
And so it'll be I tried now less to do that because I'm mindful of like, yeah, you know, for me, I'm used to someone being like, you shouldn't be here, you should be dead. Why are you here? You should go somewhere else. You should go on an island. You should, you know, whatever. Now knowing like maybe that's not so comfortable for everyone. Like I don't share that stuff as much, even to educate. So I'm a little less out about it. I think the thing that still gets me daily when it happens is, I was talking about this the other day too. I'll get people asking advice, or what starts off as advice,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll be like, you know, in my DMs, and they'll say like, you know, I'm really scared. I just found out my status. I'm so worried. I don't know what to do. And now this has happened to me dozens and dozens of times at this moment. So it is a trending thing, unfortunately. I'll start providing them with resources, and then suddenly that will turn into them hitting on me, and then them using that frame as a pickup. And it's happened now like dozens of times. And it's such a weird thing. So it's like opening yourself up as an educator. You find people parasocial to you,
Mm-hmm.
but then people also think that the boundary lines don't exist. It's such a,
Yeah.
it's a, every day I'm finding new things, is essentially the thing.
Yes, I've learned so much.
Social media is great until it isn't.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I've definitely seen and learned a lot, you know, being around for 47 seasons. One of the oldest soap operas still around, but as I like to think of it. And it's just, it's interesting at how some of the things that come out of people's mouths, what they kind of seem to latch on. And as an actor and a writer and all of that stuff, do you ever get inspiration from some of the things that you've seen?
I almost exclusively do. The thing is, the thing that makes people saying wild crap worth it is the fact that I can go, or my wife can go, okay, write that down. That's going into something. That's going into something. It almost makes it like there's a never-ending pool of just information. I mean, we get that all the time, and it's scenarios that'll happen to us where it's like, okay, write that down. So I almost think like I'm almost happy when it does, because it's like, and I'll joke, I'm like, I'm not as confrontational as I am in my sketches. I'm not as loud or informative in the moment as I am in maybe in my sketches. And that's because it's like I'm sitting there in the moment being like, this isn't appropriate here, but this would be wonderful for a sketch. Or, you know, this will be a moment I can frame this into a short film or into a story of some kind. So it's a never-ending pool of new chances to create stuff.
Speaking of your sketches, um, I first saw you with your crypt tips, and I love the fact that you do the cane pain and the different sayings that you come up with. How often, and I know that some of that is very often, but how often do you run into a lot of those things that you've mentioned where people are just like, let's go for a walk and, oh, I'm sorry, you can't walk, kind of thing, where they say the most inappropriate things all the time.
It happens a lot. We just moved just outside the city, so it's happening just a little less. But when we were in the city in New York, anytime I was outside, uh, it became a running joke that like if Carrie wasn't with me, I would inevitably come back to the apartment with some story, and it'd be like, okay, well this just happened, or this person did this, or someone would be like, are you okay? Or someone just tried to give me $1. I don't know. I'm just things like that often. Um, and it's always happened that way. I've always been a magnet for people, and like when I lived in LA, it was the same thing. Anytime I took public transit, I inevitably had some weird things happen of like, and most of the time it's boiled down to this like one thing, which is just like, are you okay? And I'll be doing like nothing. I'll just be standing there like waiting for the train. And someone just be like, are you okay? And I'm like, I don't know what vibe I'm giving off. I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm doing, but I'm just existing.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I guess in some way I'm not okay. As okay as anyone's okay.
And I ask that because I've seen so many videos, some of multiple content creators talking about the most outrageous things that constantly get asked of them. Are you okay? What's wrong with you? But I bring that up because that's something that also needs to be addressed in our community, that we don't have to answer those things.
Yeah.
I think, especially when you become disabled later in life, you're taught to, well, if a person asks you something, you should be polite and answer. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but like, as a person who has been born disabled, were you taught to just, you don't have to answer, or was it also kind of,
I see. I say this too. I feel like with the time period I was born in, with my disability, I, I'm very impressed with like the new age of disabled, like young people and people who are becoming disabled now, where I feel like it's more of this like, here's your pamphlet, here's your group, here's your discussion points, here's your topics. When I was born disabled, it was just like, eventually I was like, oh, no one else is like this, and no one's had a conversation about it. Like it was just, okay, this is what it is, and that's just kind of how it was. Like my mom, we didn't have conversations about it, and that might have been its own ableism, and I'm sure it was. I mean, I found out recently, like my grandmother was not very into the idea that I was going into speech therapy and occupational therapy, and she felt like we didn't need it, or it was this thing of like, I think I take it as, now looking at it, probably like a worry or shame in the family of like, but we're fine, everything's fine, let's not talk about anything so we all can be okay. And so it was a little of that. So I didn't have I mean, I feel like I didn't have a direction or anyone telling me how I was supposed to feel about my disability. And I was just kind of going through it as a teenager. I was making the jokes along with my friends so that I could be on the joke. So at least that we'd be laughing together, not knowing that I was just appeasing something that I didn't need to appease, and that I was lowering my own status for the sake of comfort for other people. As I got older than that, I would do things constantly, and we still do. We go out of our way to make things difficult for ourselves so we don't make things difficult for other people.
yep.
Yep.
I mean, there'll be so many things where we don't realize until later. Like, we could have just asked for something. We could have asked for someone to do that for us, or we could have for accommodations. But and I'm still of that mindset. I was in LA for years and years before I realized there was Access-a-Ride, and you could get cars sent, brought to you, and you could get around. I just took the bus everywhere. you know? So in terms of what I'm supposed to tell people and what I'm not supposed to tell people, I think my version of that was always like, what does this moment need? Is this moment appropriate to go into the full story? How long am I spending with this person? Is this you know, and it would always be that. It would be a constant calculation of like, if this is somebody asking me something on the street, I'm going to give the shortest version of it possible that's going to get me out of the way. And I think something too is like, there's a vulnerability in our community, obviously. So you have to assess like, I have the thing where I'm trying to be the friendliest so that I don't end up in an altercation
Yep.
because I don't have the benefit. Some people are like, oh, you should have just told them to go F themselves. I'm like, that sounds great on paper. But when you're in New York City and you're on a street by yourself
Yeah.
and someone who's much bigger than you and can run fast and might have something on them, you don't maybe necessarily want to tell them to go F themselves
Right.
when you're in a wheelchair and you can not get away and you have a little senior dog with you. Like, maybe not the best time. So you have to be mindful. So, like, that's sort of what I'd always do, which is like, you know, I'd often tell people about the cerebral palsy or I was born disabled. But then I'm like, is this a moment to talk about the HIV? Rarely, you know, it was like, when are those appropriate? And like, I'm on a bus now. Okay, do I want everyone on this bus to have to know this story? You know, so it would always change. But I do understand that. Like, you're supposed to give something to people. And even when I talk about it online, where I'm like, you know, oh, I didn't need help, and that person was being, you know, not letting me do my own thing and be independent. There'll always be someone in the comments who says, well, you know, I guess people just can't be nice these days,
Oh
or
God, yes.
oh, well, I would love it if somebody offered me help. Like, that's great for you. That's not what I wanted. And also, if you've been in this situation, you know the tone and you know what is actually happening. And that's something that I don't think you can ever really explain in a video or in a written form. It's something you just have to experience.
Yep.
When someone's saying that they're going to help you or that you need help, there's a tone that it tells you that you don't have the agency, you're not capable, and I feel bad for you.
Yes.
And it's all of those things wrapped up, and you can't process it unless you've been through it.
Yep.
Yeah. And,
So, kind of back to the original question, when you first, as far as you can remember, first kind of understood and found out about the HIV positive, did that, like, what kind of effect did that have on you mentally? I would think that would be kind of scary to hear as a kid.
I found out when I was 11, and I found out by accident. My mom didn't know when she wanted to tell me, and she was still trying to work it out with the doctors. And we went in one day, and it wasn't our normal primary, and he didn't know the story, he didn't know the background, so he just blurted it out. And then we had to have the whole conversation on the way home. And I think the hardest thing was like, at that time, I was 11, so it was like 2000, 2001. And so kids were still getting kicked out of schools for being HIV positive. Parents were still worried about their own kids being around kids with HIV. So the hardest thing was that I just got dumped this big information about my life and about myself, and I couldn't tell anyone, and I was not allowed to tell anyone. And as life goes, because it's always ironic and it's always funny, what is the thing we're learning in health class that week? HIV
Yep.
and HIV death rates. And I'm sitting here as an 11-year-old, like, this is a thing I didn't know I had. Now I know I have it. Now I know what this does. And now I can't tell anyone. And I had to keep that a secret for about 6 years
Wow.
before I came out in theater. And so it was definitely scary. I feel like I definitely shut down a lot of things about that time period. And I even talk about, you know, trying to remember certain aspects of life around then. And I feel like I often have this a little bit of like parse out memory of stuff. And I think it was just a lot of it was probably just very traumatic, and I didn't want to keep it in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely, it's still taken. I mean, that's why once I started coming out about it, I came out about it to everyone. And I was so quick to talk about it because I wanted it not be a secret anymore. And I just wanted it to free me of any responsibility. And I felt like I couldn't have friendships with people who didn't know, because I always wondered, in every interaction, would they treat me differently if they knew?
Right.
Would this be the same interaction? And I just didn't want that.
No, and it makes sense because you want people to like you for you, not because you can give them something or, you can take away something. It's all about, a mutual relationship as opposed to, well, I have this and they want to either coddle you or they run away.
Mhm.
And I've, you know, seen this before and I've kind of felt it too, but you really know who your friends are when you're disabled because they either stay or they run.
Mhm.
And if you're, straightforward from the get go, this is what I have, this is what's wrong, and they stay, you've got a real friend.
Oh yeah, it's a filtration system. It
Yes.
allows you to really see the people that you need and realizing that you never lost people because those weren't people worthy of losing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good, you know, that's really good that you say that because sometimes I've had troubles with that. That, feeling of, well, they're gone and I lost so much, but I didn't.
No.
No, because they were never enough to begin with. So
No.
yeah.
Exactly.
And, you know, sometimes we get so lost in our own minds that we have troubles kind of seeing it from a different point of view until somebody's like, "Hey, dummy, this is this is how it is." And you're just like, "Oh yeah." And so because of that, because of having HIV and having cerebral palsy, what was like kind of figuring out how to live alone, and how was that? Because I'm short, and being in the wheelchair
Oh,
doesn't help, and sometimes trying to reach things I can kind of stand, but getting on tippy toes, it's bad.
That's how she got me.
Yeah, so
I'm 6'5", so
so yeah, I'm like 5'2", and so how did you navigate living by yourself without necessarily having those extra people or
I think it was just adapting over time, and like I spent a lot of time as even when I was in high school, it was just kind of me around my house. My mom worked late. My stepdad was, he was there. He was in the room somewhere, um, but that's as much as it kind of went. And so I was just kind of used to always just doing it how I needed to do it. And so, I had roommates in California at the beginning, but we kind of didn't really, we all did our own thing. And so it'd just be a matter of like, all right, I'm going to put the cups low and I mean, I was short as well. I'm 5'4",
well, that's
five
still
five.
giant to me.
Yeah, 5'5" if I'm doing an audition, but 5'4" if I'm
there
not.
you go.
uh, but no, yeah, and so it's you just kind of adapt. I think I was very stubborn, and I think in a lot of ways I was incredibly naive, and I think that helped. Not knowing, I think about that a lot, where I'm like, I didn't know how many times I could have probably this certain thing could have gone wrong, or I could have used help here, or this was so incredibly tough. I think I just didn't. I just did it. I just
Hmm.
went for it, and I didn't think about that until later. Now I think about it. Now, I go down the block and I'm winded and I'm like, I don't know how to do this anymore. And I make sure I have accommodations, or we just moved into a new house and we made sure to get like a chairlift because it has a lot of stairs, and like
There you go.
really taking this decade of my life to be like, no, these are the things that I actually need to make things easier on me. Whereas in my 20s, it was all about like proving, proving,
Hmm.
proving,
Yep.
proving. I can prove to everyone I can do everything on my own, and that's great, and it's good to do that. It's you get strength from that, but I think you get even more strength from the other thing,
Yes,
which is accepting and saying I need help. That takes more strength to me.
I think it does too. And how was it when you finally got with Carrie, your wife, like being able to go from you know hyper independence because being person of any sort of disability, you tend to, and at any age, you tend to kind of want to say, oh well, I can do it, I can still do it, and then being with your significant other who's like, let me help you.
Well, it's so interesting because we are caretaker personality types, and but what's good is also our disabilities kind of affect us in a different way, each of us. So we
Hmm.
kind of balance each other out and like what tasks we can take care of and how we do that. And we're ever evolving, and now having a child, it's been an interesting process where we're kind of learning through it all of like when is enough for each of us and when is too much. And we're constantly the only thing that we ever even, and I wouldn't even say butt heads, but the one thing that we have frustrations over is worrying that the other one is doing too much
Right.
to balance out. And so it's just inevitable that it's like one of us is going to try to make up for the other person or try to do more for the other person. And then in that, one of us is inevitably hurt or more tired the next day. And we just have to accept that.
Yeah,
So it's been interesting because we do balance each other out. And like when I was moving across country to live with her, I had the license and I could drive. So I did the long drives, but she did the load in and the load out. And she was more capable at doing that. So it's like we've always found ways to divvy up responsibility.
Speaking of long drive, so you guys were long distance then for a little bit?
Yeah.
Sorry, but I'm just curious because Mike and I were long distance too for a while. And he ended up moving to New Jersey from Ohio to be with me. And so how was it that you guys met?
So we met because we were with the same agent. We were with the same acting agent. And then we started talking and fell for each other. And I was in LA and she was in New York. And we were going to meet up and have our first date. She was going to come out to LA and then the pandemic hit. And then we ended up on 8 months of remote talking and doing that for so long until we eventually started feeling more comfortable flying back and forth. And so for me, I grew up in Brooklyn. So when it came time to be like, who's going to be making the move, I was like, well, maybe it's time. And I was kind of done with LA at that point, and I felt ready to come back. And so I made the decision, like, I'm going to make the move. And it was, I think that was 2022 that I made the move back to New York. And that was when she flew out to meet me in LA for the road trip. That's when I proposed. And I proposed after I picked her up from the airport.
Awesome.
Literally right on the side of the road.
I had to give hints.
That's so funny. I always picked her up with a cup of coffee, and so I had a empty cup of coffee, and I had the ring in there.
Oh,
And so
that's great.
That's awesome. I like that.
I was actually going to ask that question. You stole it from me.
Well, because I was faster.
But I do have another question. You had mentioned that you had a child, and I know the answer to this. I've seen it online. I've seen your videos. But for the audience specifically, you have a child. You're HIV positive. Don't you pass that down?
No.
Yeah.
He's HIV negative, and it's because I'm undetectable. My viral load is undetectable, which means you're untransmittable. U equals U, which is the term that we use in the HIV community. And my wife is HIV negative. He's HIV negative. And it's such a miracle. It's something I never thought could be. But it's been a proven science for so long now. And and he's healthy and thriving, and he's in the 90th percentile for height.
Great.
Tall boy, and 70th percentile for weight. So he is growing.
That is awesome.
That is awesome. And I love the pictures of his little hands. Like, I so miss that with my kids. My kids are like giants compared to me. Which, is understandable, being 5'2", married to a giant. But like, I wasn't able to carry my kids past the age of like 2 because they were too big. They were like my height, basically. So enjoy it while you can. And I love seeing the pictures of him just sleeping on your chest. I miss those moments so much. And as an old mother that I am, just, you know what, you'll just love it. But I'm not going to give advice because you didn't ask, and I'm not going to give it. So, but it's like hard for me sometimes because it's like I've got autism and ADHD. So I want to immediately like, oh, well, this is what I did. This is, my experience. So I'm trying not to do that.
No, but honestly, I mean, we got so much of that before he was born, and I think I was like, you try to be mindful and be respectful, and you're like, oh, I don't know, and the world is so it's hard to navigate parenting in general. But now that he's here, I get why you would want to like. Now I find myself doing the exact same thing, even only 6 months in, and it's almost like you're just trying to like you want to give people a map, and it's like there's so many wonderful treasures to find, and then there's also things to worry and not worry about, and
Hmm.
it's just your way of connecting to people. So like I totally get it in a way that I didn't before when people would start giving me advice. Now I'm like, oh no, I understand, and it's like partly connecting, it's partly like don't worry, this phase goes away,
Right.
and don't worry, like you got this, and it's hard not to want to do that. So like I totally
Yeah, and
Have
it's just I know it drove me nuts before my kids were here. We're like, oh well, wait until you have kids. They'll be blah blah blah, and it's just like whatever, whatever. You don't know what you're talking about. And then I had my kids, and I'm like, well, shit, they were right. And it's like why didn't I write the stuff down, kind of thing. And
yeah.
but
as two actors, have you had any problems with managing time and figuring out how to handle having a baby and waking up at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and 3:15?
Well, luckily, as actors, especially right now, we have loads of time.
Okay.
No,
yes,
but genuinely, performing what like it is actually one of those careers that does make it more manageable to be with him, and like we are very grateful. Like our schedules are kind of all over the place. We never know what's going to happen. I mean, we'll go from being like this is how our day is going to go to getting an audition. My wife just got one for like a series regular thing where like suddenly now your day that you're going to have tomorrow was going to be like this, and it's now going to be like this instead, and managing sleep and time, and it's all just kind of this juggling act. But I think we're very grateful that we have this much time as we do with him, and we know we're very privileged for that because we've both gotten to be with him for the entirety so far. We've never been away from him,
That's
either of
great.
us, and that's not always the case. It's mostly never the case, and so like we're trying to be very mindful of that stuff, and it's
Yeah.
going to be tricky, I'm sure, once we have to deal with it more, and we've had moments of that, and trying to juggle what our schedule is going to be. I think it's more of the unpredictability of it,
Hmm.
of the like, will we have to fly out somewhere? Will one of us have to suddenly be without the other one, at a moment's notice? And we're navigating that daily.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting. It's been very, I mean, but he's right there with us. We're trying to reframe people's idea of what it means to have a kid and be in the industry. He's joining us in all of our Zoom meetings for industry stuff. He's right there. I'm trying to be like very more like carefree about like if he's in the background noise of my self tape and being much more like that's what it is and that's the life, and like
Yeah.
it's not reasonable to get a babysitter to do an audition. Like
yes.
you can't. It's not financially feasible. It's not
Hmm.
something that people can do, and I think we need to make it more commonplace that kids be in some of these spaces,
I
and
agree.
that we give room for it.
It's hard to do. It is hard to work and have your kids right there sometimes, but at the same time, it's hard to separate from them. Like they should be heard in the background because it's a part of it is a balancing act, and we need to show that we can all figure out the balancing act. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, there are times when you want to just shave your head bald so you don't pull your hair out. And there are times when you would love to just kick the kid. You don't, you don't, but it's in the back of your head, and you go through these things, and it's a part of life, and it should be kind of a part of the norm where you
Hmm.
see or hear them kind of chirping in the background or of a meeting of any sort,
Hmm.
Hmm.
because I personally feel like they should be a part of every aspect because I asked them to be here.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's becoming more and more common. The more I call places, I know they're working from home because I either hear their dog in the background or I hear a kid talking in the background. And it never bothers me. So I think it is
No,
becoming more common since COVID. So it is a little bit better, but it's a long way to go.
Yeah.
it is, and I think just this idea of like it's I think we've also gotten a little far away from like how just perceptions of what we're allowed to be doing with ourselves and how we're allowed to like we have to be everything,
Mm-hmm.
yet we have to um, appease everyone at the same time and like multi hyphenates and even in the industry and the performer side of things like the things we get requested to do and how we have to be director, costume designer, we have to be all these things for our self tapes and then we have to do them the best possible in the quickest time frames and realizing like yeah well, we all have lives and chronic illnesses
Mm-hmm.
and things take a little while and I think it's like a status thing too. I'm working on it where it's like I'm not giving these things power because I can only give what they can give back and like it doesn't feel good when you give to something anything whatever job that is that you're doing or people in your life when you're just giving way too much and you're not getting that in return and it feels disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm always constantly being like, I'm only going to give this thing, even though I love it, I'm only going to give this thing this much time because I'm a whole person who needs to be with my family. I need to be with myself. I have other projects, I have other things. We are full human beings. We can't just drop everything for something or a company that's going to decide one day they don't care about us
Right.
anymore and they're going to fire us or they're going to let us go or whatever.
And
So often, yeah,
that's true because at any given point, whether you're in theater or movies or the 9 to 5 grind, we have to kind of take back our time and the fact that we are deserving of way more than they are willing to give. And we only get one life. It's not like, you can put in a coin slot and start over with, some 5 lives.
yeah,
We get one. And to have to just constantly put in and give and give and give and never get anything in return is just, I think it's ridiculous. And we need to turn that because we should have lives.
absolutely. We, it's at the end of the day, I think, like, am I going to, if I'm on my deathbed, am I going to regret that I didn't write one more page to a screenplay that never got produced, or am I going to regret that I didn't spend more time with my family?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to,
Right.
regret the family one.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's been studies where the majority of people had said, I wish I spent more time with my family. They never said, oh, you know what? I needed that extra car. I should have worked harder. They never say things like that. I mean,
No.
don't get me wrong. I would love the cars, if you want to give them to me. But
We take donations.
it's just, we have, especially as chronically ill and disabled people, we have to learn to take ourselves back because we are so, ingrained that you got to hustle.
Hmm.
And all that hustle does is ends up disabling us more. And, ooh, kitty. I love kitties. And it just kind of ruins things. But
Yeah.
when you are able to, relax and rest, you can be productive certain times of the day. You can then have, a better relationship, not only with yourself, but with your spouse or significant other or friends, because you were able to take that time out and,
Hmm.
get that needed rest. And I think
Yes.
when COVID hit, it kind of made us all realize, well, we need to have rest.
Yes.
We
I think
can't
that was
keep this
I
up.
mean, the only thing to come out of
Yes.
COVID was the idea of like that this could have been an email culture, a
Yes.
pullback of like, okay, what are we doing with our lives? Like, we got to rethink things. I think that was probably the best thing and the only good thing that came out of that
Yeah.
was people taking their time back.
Yeah. And I agree. And I want to ask you, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
about the fact that you are, I believe you said you're pansexual and
Yes.
that your wife is also an LGBTQ person. How did you discover that?
Well, I mean, for me, I had always known, into some degree, as anyone kind of knows, I've seen Aladdin. Uh, I got it. I understood. Um, I was into the killers. I get it. It's, uh, but for me, it was this long journey because of my HIV, actually. So the biggest thing for me was I kind of knew early on that I was bisexual, which would become pansexual. And I got kind of dismissed through some family members who maybe were like, well, how would you know? Like at a young age, like, well, you don't know yet. You don't know yet. And so I kind of shoved that down for a little while. And then when I wanted to come out about it, what kept me back was I had realized that I'd started to build this community through advocacy for HIV. And I started to make um, this like progress in the communities because people started seeing someone who was quote unquote heterosexual and HIV positive. And those two things are never really seen together.
Right.
And so I got to educate people in a way that they hadn't before because I was getting them through a market that they weren't used to. So I was this young guy who was this Caucasian. I always joke that the one space that white Caucasian heterosexual men need to be is in HIV. That's the only space they're not. But we need to show them they're there, and maybe then suddenly people would care about it. But truly, it got to a point where I was so worried that I was going to lose that power to educate if I came out as pansexual, because then people were going to suddenly be like, oh, he's pansexual and HIV positive. Yeah, that makes sense. And they were going to dismiss all these other things that you can be born with it, or that it doesn't matter, that it's not just these direct things. So it took a long time, and eventually my wife had come out about it, and she had done this post online, and I actually had started to talk to her about that and being so impressed by it. We always joke too, like we fell in love kind of because of that post. And it's ironic that two pansexuals who just came out about being pansexual found each other and then ended up in a hetero relationship.
Yes.
But yes, that's the long and short of it.
No, it's good. And like, because I asked mainly because I recently figured out that I was bisexual. It's like the signs were there, but it was just like one of those things where if it didn't hit me over the head, I didn't notice.
Yeah.
And then, because I was talking to my therapist, and I'm just like, well, I like watching pornos, and I like watching the girls. And, and she's just like, yeah. And I'm like, talking about these things. And she's like, and? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I said, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And it just kind of like, it was, then it dawned on me that all these years that I was liking girls, and it didn't like manifest in my mind that way, because especially when I grew up in the 80s and 90s, you didn't talk about being anything other than you were either gay or you were straight.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I knew there was lesbians, but I didn't realize that there was bisexuals and there were things like that. And so it just never dawned on me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and also it doesn't help that I think even within the LGBTQ community, there's a lot of bi-erasure. There's a lot of people who don't want to believe it, or are like, oh no, you're just on the road. You'll be gay eventually, and it's like they brush it off. So it's a space that is hard to navigate because you're getting it from both sides, where you're getting it from the straight community being like, that's ridiculous, you don't know what you want, and then you're getting it from the gay community being like, that's ridiculous, you don't know what you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it is hard. I mean, and I did the same thing where I was like, I spent so long being like, oh, do I just want to be like these guys?
Yeah.
Do I just want to like look like Johnny Depp in Secret Window? Do I want to like Brad Pitt in Fight Club? Or do I like these guys? And it was like, it took a long time to be like, oh, okay, I see what happened here.
Yeah, because I would look at women and it would all, like, I would admire their bodies, and I would always rationalize it as, oh, it's because they've got a good body and, everybody looks good like that. And, or I love the dress, or I love their hair. But it was just like secretly in the back of my mind, it was just like, wow, you're stupid. That's not the case.
We could go on for hours, but unfortunately we have to wrap it up here.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute pleasure. Like I said, we could go on for hours.
Yes.
So it's been great.
And if you ever get the chance, please, can we talk to you again? And we would love to have you and your wife on. and
Absolutely.
like talk to you both about if you can, projects that you are able to talk about, or just kind of life together, because I find it fascinating being able to talk to other people that are disabled and LGBTQ, because sometimes it feels like
We're
you're on
alone.
an island,
Yep.
and
Well, no,
that
yeah.
there's you either have to go with the disabled people or you have to go with the LGBTQ. And being able to find people that are just like, well, I'm both. It's like, oh, yay.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, we want so badly to put ourselves in, or we don't want to so badly. We're told that we need to be put into a box,
Right.
and that we need to be a brand, and we need to be a certain label. And some of us are just many boxes, many labels, and we don't have to be just one thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's wonderful.
Yep.
And yeah, I would absolutely love to come back on and talk about other projects and things. And
Perfect.
my wife and I do have a project going on right now called Adoptive. We'll be releasing that in January. We're very
I
excited.
can't wait.
We wrote, directed, created it together.
That's really awesome.
I've seen some of the clips of it, and like one made me kind of snort my tea through my nose. So I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful. That's great. Well, thank you so much again for having me on.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And can you let everybody know where to find you to
Yes.
connect?
So on Instagram, you can find me at Joseph A. Kibler. Same thing for TikTok. And then if you want to follow the new series me and my wife are doing, you go to AdoptiveTheSeries on all platforms.
Awesome. And definitely look at his crypt tips, because they are like the best.
Yep.
And like just your humor just is beautiful, truly. And thank you so much.
you. Well, thank you. That's very kind.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Please leave a rating for us wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Othering Podcast is brought to you by Loudcore Productions in conjunction with your support. Your host, Mike and Dory Morris, graphics by Joshua Morris, and join us next week on the Othering Podcast.